Shipwrecks in Rhode Island? Oh yeah, we've got them, but they probably aren't what you're imagining. Something like this, or this, or how about this? Nah, our shipwrecks don't look quite like that, but they're still really cool. Trust me, I'm the president of the fan club. Now, you might be surprised to learn that the largest ship graveyard is sitting just outside of Providence, the state's capital. Unfortunately, unless you value old Narragansett beer bottles, there is no treasure here. This is Green Jacket Shoal, home of Rhode Island's largest ship graveyard, containing 29 vessels. If this looks familiar, it's because it's right off Route 195 on the coast of Bold Point Park, and most of it is visible at low tide. Those pieces of wood you see sticking up when you drive by or walk in India Point Park? Yeah, shipwrecks. Mostly. There are also docks, pilings, and barges chilling here. Don't worry, I'll show you everything. Welcome to Rhode Island's abandoned shipwreck graveyard. I've covered many of Rhode Island's abandoned places, including my old middle school, the largest abandoned school on the east coast of America, the old McCoy Stadium, former home of the AAA affiliate of the Boston Red Sox, and even a giant abandoned milk can on the side of one of the most well-traveled highways in the state. But abandoned ships are a new topic for me, so I was excited to dive into the history here. And I know you're thinking right now, great, so we're just going to talk about some wood sticking out of the water in Providence? And that's where you're wrong, because I will also be showing you my favorite abandoned shipwreck from somewhere around the world. And I have to say that shipwrecks convey a different sense of abandonment than the usual buildings I explore and document. There's something especially solitary and creepy about them, never mind how insanely dangerous they are, eroding and collapsing faster than almost any building. But first, we need to talk about Green Jacket Shoal, a small spot tucked away in a tiny state with some big history. In order to understand why this spot is home to so many sunken ships, we have to go back in time. Let's get into it. The shoreline here was once filled with oyster beds and was a major fishery until the mid-1800s. After the Industrial Revolution started upriver at Slater Mill, the area transitioned into an industrial waterfront with railways running along the water. By the late 1800s, Providence had developed into a major port and the site had become a shipyard where people brought their boats to be repaired. The Providence Dry Dock and Railway Company acted as the service station for all the ships coming in and out of port, including my ship, because man, those rocks really come out of nowhere. You should put up a sign or something. Oh. Anyway, it was the main ship repair facility in Providence, and Green Jacket Shoal was its parking lot. Ships were built and serviced here from 1884 to 1919. Ships like the Titanic. Nah, I'm just kidding, but could you imagine? For real though, everything from steamships to barges and fishing boats were serviced here, and it's these ships that are under the water. The vessels off Bold Point were abandoned here at the end of their working lives. Many were transported to the company's yard from within Providence Harbor, stripped of their valuable machinery and hardware, things like engines, boilers, navigational instruments, and rigging gear, and then moved a short distance to Green Jacket Shoal to rest in peace. There are so many historic vessels here that the Providence Journal labeled this 33-acre site as where ships go to die. And they've had a hard time dying. The water here was so polluted over the years that bacteria that would normally eat these vessels couldn't survive. Since most of these ships were left here over 100 years ago, they were slowly forgotten over the years. But thanks to the efforts of marine archaeologist David Robinson, they have pretty much all been accounted for. During his research, David highlighted their importance, saying, "This site captures the maritime focus that Providence had during its golden era, at the peak of its history as an industrial port city. The graveyard is not junk, but an archaeological site of some significance." David conducted an archaeological reconnaissance survey in 2016 that goes in-depth on everything you could ever want to know about Green Jacket Shoal, and is where I got the majority of my information. I highly recommend reading it. So what exactly is resting at the bottom here? First, let me hype you up with my favorite abandoned shipwreck out of the dozens I've read about over the years. The 1994 wreck of the storied SS American Star in Fuerteventura, one of the Canary Islands. It's arguably the coolest looking shipwreck ever, being beached and ripped in half, yet still standing. Let me give you the quick history. It was launched in 1939 as a passenger ship and had many names in her lifetime. It was even repurposed by the US Navy during World War II to transport troops, then later became a commercial ship. Fast forward 50 years of being in operation. In 1994, it was sold with the intention of becoming a hotel ship, but it was in rough shape by this point, so it had to be towed carefully, with its propellers removed. Its final trip was a long one. A 100-day trip from Greece to Thailand, going around the Cape of Good Hope. Except, 2 weeks into the journey, the crew encountered a massive thunderstorm. The tow lines couldn't be reconnected, those aboard were evacuated via helicopter, and the ship was left adrift until it was beached on Playa del Garci in Fuerteventura. The ship's bow was beached, but the stern was still floating, and both were getting hammered by the waves. Because of this, within 48 hours the surf had broken the ship in two, with the stern section collapsing and sinking within 2 years. The 379-foot bow section remained upright for another 10 years, and became a local attraction for onlookers and looters. And look, I'm a pirate, okay? I had to get in on this, especially since the locals even created a zip line to the wreck to carry off anything valuable. In 1999, a documentary film crew even boarded the remains to film the interior, which is some of the only known footage to exist showing inside after the wreck. Just listen to what it sounds like inside the abandoned ship. One of the goals of the crew was to bring gas generators aboard to light up the ship at night one more time as an art project, which they impressively accomplished. Absolutely insane. Today, the entire ship has collapsed, and what remains of the wreck is only visible at low tide. But for a time, it was an abandoned icon of the seas. I could go on about this ship, but we have to head back to Providence, Rhode Island now, and answer the question, what kind of vessels are abandoned under the water here? According to David Robinson's research, in this area is currently 2 side-wheeler cruise ships, 17 scow barges, 4 sailing vessels, 3 harbor steamers, 2 steam diesel boats, and 1 schooner barge. This map shows exactly where each vessel lies in the shoal. Of the 29 here, the identities and histories of just 2 are presently known. The remnants of the Bay Queen and Mount Hope, 2 of Narragansett Bay's iconic steamboats from the late 1800s and early 1900s. This is very cool because steamboats were massive at the time. They were an easy way to travel, especially in Rhode Island, which is not an island, but does have a lot of water. So families would take steamships for day trips around the state. They were practical and they looked good, which is exactly why I just traded in my pirate ship for a fresh steamship. Let's start with the Mount Hope steamship, in operation from 1888 to 1934. The Mount Hope was the prize of Providence, Fall River, and Newport. People loved this thing, and it showed, being consistently filled with passengers and tourists. Look at that beauty. And if you think the outside looked good, then check out the interior. Hot damn. Sadly, she made her last trip in September of 1934 amid the Great Depression, when passenger counts dropped significantly. The Mount Hope fell into disrepair, was abandoned, and in 1936 she sank at the Dyer Street dock in Providence, shown here in this photo. She was then floated and dismantled for salvage at Bold Point, then abandoned at her final resting place. Today, the remains of the Mount Hope is located right here in Green Jacket Shoal, next to the remains of the old pier, still visible almost 100 years later. The other iconic vessel here is the Bay Queen sidewheel steamer, in operation from 1865 to 1902. It was one of the most popular vessels on the bay in its time, its giant wheels propelling passengers through the waters. In operation since the end of the Civil War, by 1902 it was retired and planned to be converted into a barge. So the Bay Queen was stripped of its machinery and upper works. The planned conversion never happened, so the Bay Queen was also moved to the north side of the pier and abandoned right here. It's in relatively good shape compared to the Mount Hope, with most of the hull intact. Thanks, pollution! Alright, so besides the two identified and iconic steamboats, what else is there? Still not treasure. On this map is exactly what type of vessels are under the surface. Red is a scow barge, yellow is a harbor steamer, blue is a sailing vessel, and green is a steam or diesel ship. But I want to show you the most prominent things still easily visible. This wreck right here I showed you earlier is an amazingly preserved hull of a schooner barge, which would have carried stone, grain, lumber, and coal. This bad boy right here is what's left of a scow barge, used to carry freight and passengers along or across inland waterways. And this is what's left of an inland waterway work barge. The other remains you can see from the shore is this, the remains of the dry dock pier, which used to stretch all the way into the shoal. This massive pier served as the slip for Rhode Island's first floating dry dock. Here's a photo of what it used to look like, with ships and barges in the surrounding water. It's wild how active this spot was back in the day. So why has everything been sitting here for so long? The shoal was outside of the dredged harbor limits and its navigation channel, and the ship graveyard was away from slips, piers, businesses, and homes along the waterfront. It was just a convenient location to dispose of vessels because no one was going through there anyway. What's going to happen to them now? It looks like these wrecks will continue to stay here, and our guy, David Robinson, suggests we leave the vessels undisturbed and create ways for the public to enjoy them, which is exactly why in his research he references adding this site to the National Historic Register, hoping to preserve this graveyard for future explorers. So the next time you're driving on 195 or walking through the park on the shore here, know that you're looking at some real history poking through the surface, because it's much more than just a bunch of wood sticking out of the water. It's shipwrecks. To see more interesting Rhode Island icons like this and learn about their history, you can check out the rest of my Abandoned from Above series on my YouTube channel right now. Thank you very much for watching.